welcome back. You're watching TV47 Breakfast if you're just joining us. And this morning we want to talk about the escalating crisis that is threatening the very fabric of our democracy. Just the last 2 months, 18 journalists and 2 drivers have been brutally attacked by political goons while in the line of duty, and this is according to the Media Council of Kenya. And we see, attacks using machetes. We've seen seizures of, their equipments while at work. And that is what we're talking about this morning with Rebecca Mutiso. She's the manager, press freedom and advocacy at the Media Council of Kenya. Thank you so much, Becky, for making time and for braving the rains. How are you feeling?
I'm fine, Anne. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here to have this discussion with you.
Right, we're happy to have you. I want us to start from something very recent. Okay, this conversation is very, very recent. But on Friday, the Media Council of Kenya, you were in Nakuru for, some sort of training. Walk us through, some of the deliberations that you came up with as we, set the pace for this conversation on how to prepare journalists for the general election.
Okay, we were in Nakuru on 3 missions. First was to launch our strategic plan that will guide our operations from this year, 2026 to 2030.
Yeah.
The second most important duty we were there to do was to launch our election reporting guidelines for 2027. We are headed to the election in the next 1 year. And as the media regulator, our job is to ensure that journalists are prepared to cover the elections in a responsible manner. So that was our second duty there. Of course, the third was to launch our media hub in Nakuru, where we provide a space for journalists to work in, which is a big part of ensuring the protection and safety of journalists. When they have a safe place to operate, they can do their stories without fear of intimidation or harassment. Thank you.
All right, great. We do have a story here that we captured, on the rise of goonism and attacks on journalists who are covering the events in Homa Bay on Sunday. Let's have that story as we, continue this conversation.
For journalists covering the Linda Mwananchi tour in Homa Bay, it began as a routine assignment to cover a political rally, before quickly it turned into a desperate fight for survival. Among those caught up in the attack was Francis Mwangi of MediaMax, who is now slowly recuperating from injuries sustained during the chaos.
Na tulipokuwa tunaenda kuchejirin, gari yetu ikazima. Wakati tulikuwa tunajaribu, dere akienda kujaribu kukurumisha, ndio hao watu walitufikia. Dere akaniambia hapa itabidi tutoroke, maana tutakufia kwa hiyo gari, watachoma. So nikienda kufungua mlango wa pande yangu, ndio mawe ilikarushwa ikaingia kwa kioo, ikanigonga jicho. Nilikuwa na miwani ikanikatakata.
The Media Council of Kenya says 8 journalists and at least 2 drivers were attacked, physically assaulted or had their equipment vandalized during Sunday's violence.
Kwanza walitoa betri, wakatoa milango na wakachoma gari. Sasa hivi mimi naongea niko nafungua gari lakini gari sina.
But Homa Bay is only the latest incident in what the council says is a worrying pattern. The Media Council of Kenya says 18 journalists and at least 2 drivers from different media houses have been assaulted and injured in the last 2 months. And with the country inching closer to the 2027 general election, the council says the trend cannot be ignored.
Investigations must not stop at those who carried out the physical attacks. We want those who organized, financed, facilitated or incited the violence must equally be held accountable.
MCK warns that continued attacks coupled with what it describes as reluctance by investigating agencies to prosecute perpetrators threaten not just journalists but democracy and media freedom. Council is now calling on Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions to move with urgency to identify those behind the attacks and ensure they face the law. Sheila Chelangat for TV47.
And our byline there is, we are just messengers. And you know, they say that you can never attack the messenger. Maybe attack whoever sent them. But really and truly, Becky, looking at the sheer frequency of this recent attacks, especially the one on Homa Bay, because it's the recent one, paint that picture for us. I know we've captured it, but now that you're here, you know, in flesh, paint that picture for us on the state of press freedom in the country today.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne, for that question. First, I want to really condole with the families of the 2 people who lost their lives during the attacking on Homa Bay, as well as the 8 journalists who are hurt, and we wish them a quick recovery.
Yeah.
And as you know, the country is headed to the election, and press freedom in Kenya is under attack.
Yeah.
In just 2 months, as our press statement said, 18 journalists have been attacked by goons.
Yeah.
We have not, that is not even the police, it's just goons. Faceless individuals carrying machetes, stones, and who simply want to cause as much havoc as they can. So if you look at that trend, it shows you that we have 12 months to the election. How is it going to be?
Yeah.
But you also see that the indicators, the Press Freedom Index, last year we were at 117 as a country, out of 180, which shows that press freedom is actually on the decline. This year, according to the Reporters Without Borders report, we are at 106, which could be an improvement. But with the way things are going right now, we are actually seeing a growing decline in press freedom. In 2022, we were at 69.
Yeah.
Just 4 years later, we are at 117, which was last year. Now we are at 106. But whatever is happening is gawning at the progress that we've made to ensure and protect press freedom. Yes.
You know, you said something that, you know, these attacks, it's not even by the police. These are just goons. The 18 attacks that you are reporting as the council, you know, in the last 2 months. But I'm interested to know, did this police also attack journalists?
You know, journalists face threats from different functions and different people. And of course, sometimes police officers are responsible for attacks against journalists. Yes, but in the last 2 months only, we are seeing a rise of attacks against journalists from goons.
Yeah.
Yes.
And would you say this is a coordinated war or a deliberate attack on journalists? Because I'm thinking, where is this coming from? If, you know, people who are meant to protect them, the police officers included, because time and time again, when journalists are covering protests, for example, you'd find journalists behind, you know, police officers as they cover the protests and everything around where there is a crowd. So is it deliberate, this attack on journalists?
I don't want to say it's deliberate, but I want to say that it is, of course, all organized attacks against the public and also against the media are planned and orchestrated by people who have the power to marshal such strengths to actually have a very well coordinated. You saw what happened in Homa Bay.
Yeah.
People are on the ground and all of a sudden a group come and just start attacking journalists and also other people. We know civil society organizations were also under attack.
Yeah.
We know also politicians were attacked. So I think in every incident where there are goons, there must be a plan to mete out violence and harass people. journalists included.
Right.
Yes.
But also, even as we talk about that, maybe people don't quite understand the impact that this has, you know, on the general public and how they get information, you know. So can you paint that picture, you know, for our audience this morning? What is the impact of attack on journalists?
Let me tell you one thing, and this is something that Kenyans must understand. The media is the messenger. Our role is to hold power to account and act in public interest. So when the media is attacked, there is a chilling effect on freedom of speech, freedom of the media, and media independence. So basically, what we are saying, attack on media is an attack on democracy itself. The media is at a place where we inform the public. We tell the public what is going on. We hold power to account and say, we are the gatekeepers, and say that, hey, things here are not going right, and we need to sit back and ask what is happening. We tell the public that there is corruption. We unearth the scandals that face the country. So when you attack the media, you are attacking democracy itself. And if we cannot speak truth to power, and if we are not allowed to operate in an environment where we can castigate and we can cover events, you see, whatever happened in Homa Bay, we were just covering activities as they were developing. So what happens when we have to unearth the issues that are happening in this country? So basically, even as we head towards the election, the media informs the public what political parties are doing, what are in their manifestos. So attack on the press has a chilling effect on democracy itself.
Right.
Yes.
Who should be held accountable, Becky, when you know a journalist is attacked in their line of duty? Really, who should we be holding accountable for that?
The perpetrators, of course, but of course the burden to ensure that the perpetrators are arrested and prosecuted, lies on police and Director of Public Prosecutions.
Right.
So basically, for us as a media council, we are calling for accountability so that the people who attack journalists are arrested and prosecuted. It's as simple as that.
Right.
Because when we continue to see attacks against journalists and nothing happens, it sends a very bad message to the public. And if action is not taken, then we risk having these cases rise even as we go towards the election.
Right.
Yes.
So they'll just be attacking journalists because they know nothing will be done. Right?
Precisely.
But I'd love to know how your internal investigations as a council show as regards the primary motives behind these specific attacks on journalists, because you've said, when there is an event, of course, attacks or organism are mated towards every other person.
Yes.
But why journalists? What are the specific motives?
Of course, it's to silence them and to stop them from telling the public what is happening. If you silence the media, what or where will the public get information? So basically the motive is simple, is to censor or force them to self-censor. The public needs to know what is happening, even in political events. And let's remind the public that journalists are not participants in political activities. We are merely purveyors of information. So when you attack us, you're attacking the wrong people. Yeah? So we need to know, even when we go to an event, we are not there to take sides. We are there to cover those activities. Yes, so we are not players in political activities.
We're just messengers.
Yes,
you
we're
you
just
cannot
messengers.
beat the messenger.
Yeah.
But Becky, I'd love to, we should have started with this. Your role, at the Media Council of Kenya,
Yes.
just, for the benefit of the journalists who are watching, to know if at all they can call Becky right now if they are attacked when, covering stories and they'd actually get help.
Yes.
The manager, press freedom and advocacy.
Yes.
What do you do at that particular desk?
So primarily, our goal is to ensure that, or our role, or my role in particular, is to ensure the protection and safety of journalists. At the same time, we have to also ensure that there is access to information by journalists, and this access to information, of course, now cascades down to the public. When journalists have access to information, then the public also are an informed electorate. We merely or simply operate under the 3 Ps, that is prevent attacks against journalists, as well as promote the safety and security of journalists. We prevent, we call for prosecution, and as well as work with other stakeholders to ensure that the media works in an environment that is free of intimidation and harassment. Yes.
Is that environment free currently? And of course, I do not want to jump into conclusions, but I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. Is that environment free and fair, and free from intimidation, as you put it, and as your desk wants to make the space look like for journalists?
Oh, so I'll start with the ideal situation. The media needs a free environment to operate, a free environment where they can do their work without fear of intimidation. Of course, we cannot say that the media is not free. We are free to a certain extent, but we are seeing those freedoms coming increasingly under threat. Yes, as we go towards the election. Yes.
Where exactly is the system failing, or who is failing journalists? Who should we blame? When journalists are intimidated, we are afraid that when we go to specific areas that will be attacked in these areas. Who is failing the system?
That's a good question, Anne. And I don't think there's a straightforward answer to it, other than to say that press freedom is guaranteed not only under the Constitution, but also other international obligations. So when there are political activities and people plan to attack journalists, and we know some of these sponsors sometimes have a lot of money, and even are politicians themselves. When a politician plans and orchestrates violence against a journalist, they are a threat to the journalist. But as you know, there are very many forces that sometimes come against journalists. Of course, there are those who are very keen on inflicting physical assault on journalists. There are those who are keen on ensuring that we don't operate by putting in place laws or pushing for laws that are not conducive to a free media. So basically, to answer you, anyone who is keen on silencing the media is an enemy of the press, whoever they are, in whatever position. Yes.
I have a very concerning question, Becky, because my thinking is, where did the rain start beating us from? What really shifted in the country's, political culture to make journalists, a specific target when we are talking about, goonism?
Yes.
What shifted? Where did the rain start beating us?
The rain started beating us, not just now. We know there's a culture of political violence in elections, and that is well documented. In every election cycle, there has always been violence against journalists and the public in general. So generally, when people who met out violence against journalists are not held to account, then it encourages that culture of impunity. So as you are saying, we need them. We are the messenger.
Yeah.
So the police and other state agencies that are mandated by the law to ensure that journalists and the entire public operate in a free space must step up and take accountability for what is happening and ensure that there is a free environment for the media to operate, including political leaders. Yes.
And I'm looking even at the digital space. It's not quite a safe space for journalists itself. So I'm thinking about what it really looks like on ground, because you'd see a lot of attacks on journalists even in the digital space. And I'd love to know what you're doing about that, because if there's no respect in the digital space, how do we expect that to translate in the physical space as well when journalists are working? Yeah.
Actually, you're right, and whatever is happening in the physical space is now moving on to online platforms.
Is it starting from the online platforms to the ground, or from the ground to the online platforms?
Actually, it starts from the ground. It's just a manifestation on social media and other online spaces. So it's actually technology facilitated violence against journalists and the public as well. So basically what you're seeing is a lot of surveillance and a lot of intimidation, abuses and harassment online. So what that means is that the media has to censor that you cannot sometimes say what you need to say on social media and another online platform. That means that we are actually forcing journalists or even the public not to speak freely as they can. It's a constitutional right. Freedom of speech is a constitutional right that also applies to journalists. And when we are not able to perform our duties even on social media, then that means that as a country, there's somewhere where we are failing.
Right.
Yes.
You have presented a petition as a council, to the ODPP and the Inspector General of Police. Tell us about what that petition is about and the progress of that petition.
So basically the petition is about the press violation cases that we have documented since January this year. So as you know, we don't have an enforcement mandate, as so to speak. What we do is document and then forward the cases to agencies that are mandated to prosecute, arrest and prosecute offenders. So basically, our petition was to ask those agencies to provide a progress report on the cases that we have submitted and also to take action against the perpetrators. Yes.
So how do you intend to ensure, as a council, that this doesn't just end as another statement? Because it's not an isolated case that we're speaking about this in August of 2026.
Yes.
But we've seen this even from the statistics and data that you've given us. So how do you intend to ensure that there's some sort of progression, that it doesn't just end with a statement that, Media Council of Kenya wrote to the ODPP, Media Council of Kenya wrote to the IG, and then that's it?
Yes. The only thing we can do is follow up and demand for action. At the same time, we can encourage dialogue between, of course, the public and the media and the media and security agencies, so that we foster a culture of respect for press freedom and the rights of journalists. Yes.
A culture of respect, right?
Yes.
And, we usually say here in our newsrooms that no story is worth your life, but really, what should a journalist do now when covering, an event where there is a politically charged crowd?
Yes.
What should I do when caught up in that particular scenario?
And in the election guidelines that we launched in Nakuru, there is actually a whole chapter on what journalists need to do, especially when covering political events. First of all, there are responsibilities that are apportioned first to security agencies. That is to ensure journalists are safe. Secondly, there is also duties that are apportioned to the media owners themselves to ensure, first of all, that there is capacity building for media personnel who are going to grounds to cover political events. And also journalists themselves must be aware. Media houses must have a risk assessment before sending journalists to the ground. In Homa Bay, there were, of course, indications that there was going to be violence. So what risk assessment did media houses do before sending their crew to the ground? Secondly, before a journalist goes to the field, there must be some briefing, what to expect, how to react, and how to take care of yourself when you're on the field.
Briefing from the council or the house, the media?
The media house itself.
Okay.
The media house bears the responsibility of briefing the journalists on what to expect on the ground. And when the journalist comes back, of course, a debriefing. Secondly, there's also the responsibility of the journalists when you're now on the ground. The media house has done whatever is necessary to ensure your protection. They have provided you with medical care. They have provided you with emergency, enough resources for you when you're on the ground. So for you when you're on the ground, it's also your responsibility to be aware of your surroundings. First, do not embed yourself in political entourage because that exposes you to risk. Do not break news in an hostile environment. And thirdly, it's just a basic thing. For example, when you're going to a rally, ensure that you dress in a manner that can, you know what I mean, yeah? You can't go to a political party whose colors are red, are blue, and then the opposition party's colors are red and you go wearing red colors. You are obviously exposing yourself to a certain level of risk. At the same time, the way you dress, you can't go wearing heels to cover a protest. But most importantly, you must also have a press card. When you go to the ground and you have a press card, it offers some certain level of security. Not always, because sometimes when in violent situations, sometimes all reason goes out of the window. But when you go to the ground, make sure you have a press card to show that you are actually an accredited journalist. Yes.
What happens to those journalists who lost, their press cards, in Homa Bay?
Yes.
Because there are cases of, they lost their equipment, their press cards were also taken away. So what happens to them? How do you help them as a council?
As a council, of course, we will ensure that they get their press cards, new press cards, so that they can be able to operate. It's just a matter of them reporting the loss and us doing a replacement, which we obviously do for any other journalist who lose their cards. In terms of equipment, sometimes as a council we are limited. We do not have sufficient resources to do this. But of course there are other stakeholders that we work with, and we will ensure that at least we see what we can do and even urge the stakeholders to step in and see what we can do. And of course, the media houses themselves have the responsibility of ensuring that they also take care of their staff as well. Yes.
I know that press card issue is a very small issue, but I should have asked about how you're protecting the victims themselves as journalists, because now we've watched that story. Somebody almost lost their eye. Somebody was attacked on the hands.
Yes.
What are you doing to these victims of Goonism?
At the Media Council of Kenya, one of our roles is to implement a rapid response mechanism in cases where journalists are attacked. So sometimes most of the times we are there to ensure that these journalists have access to medical care when we are on the ground, or at least are evacuated to a safe place. Secondly, and our biggest role is to castigate and to call out people who are planning deliberately to hurt journalists. And that is perhaps our biggest role, is to call them to account, that you cannot sit down and plan attacks against journalists. It's unacceptable and it is wrong. And the third thing that as a council we obviously do is also build the capacity of journalists so that they know how to react or how to behave when they are on the ground. And as we head towards the election, we started the countdown when we were in Nakuru on Friday. So we will roll out these trainings for journalists and media workers as well. Yes.
Building the capacity of journalists.
Yes.
Paint that picture for us in, on ground. How does that look like?
When I say building capacity, I mean it in two ways.
Okay.
First of all, as a media council, it's our responsibility to ensure that journalists adhere to the code of conduct for media practice. That is to practice responsible journalism. So our capacity building in the first front is to ensure that they understand that in any activity or in any event they cover, they are supposed to be fair, objective, accurate, and also verify facts. Secondly, we also train them on basic safety measures to take when they are on the ground. At the same time, we also build their capacity on the emerging technology. We know artificial intelligence is now a big part of how media operates. We guide them on how to use it in a responsible manner as we go towards the election and even during elections. Yes.
You mentioned something about media houses doing, the much they can to ensure that journalists are protected when they're going to these harm areas.
Yes.
But I'd love for you to walk us through the current state of safety measures, that are protecting journalists from, in-house media levels. Do you think media houses are actually doing enough in terms of providing even protective gears? Are they doing enough from your own analysis as the council?
I would not want to speak to the capacity of media houses towards now election preparedness, because I know they're all doing their best to ensure that journalists are protected. But what I can say is that we need to do a lot within this 1 year to ensure that when journalists go to cover elections, they have access to this protective. We know some have already provided their journalists with some of this protective gear. Even us as a council, we sometimes try our best to ensure that at least they have the safety jackets that we give them, or at least the jackets they wear to identify as media workers or journalists. There's a lot that needs to be done between now and the general election to ensure that journalists are protected. And that is why we are saying we cannot afford to leave this issue to only media houses. We have to have a coordinated approach towards ensuring the protection of journalists. And that is why, as the council, we need to ensure that we have a mechanism, a mechanism that will work to protect journalists. And of course, this mechanism includes media houses. Ourselves, we need to work with organizations that offer legal support to journalists, psychosocial support to journalists as well. So we need sort of a coalition to ensure that journalists are safe as we go towards the election.
Right. Perhaps have you ever thought of providing bulletproof jackets for, journalists?
Okay, the cost implication, of course, is one of the things that maybe may hinder us from doing so. But I know there are particular media houses that have actually provided this safety gear to journalists, to their journalists. And let me tell you, primarily, the protection and security of journalists primarily lies with the media houses. But we of course know that they do not have the resources to do this. So I would not want to speak above my pay grade and say and say that we will do this. But what I can assure you, Annie, is that as a council we will do everything within our power to ensure that journalists are protected as we go towards the election.
And for the sake of inclusivity, Becky, I'm thinking about freelance journalists and, correspondents. Perhaps, do you think they're receiving the same protection as, journalists who are attached to the bigger media houses? How would you say about the state of their security, these freelance journalists and independent journalists?
Of course, and when you go to the ground as media, whether you are from Nation, whether you are from TV47, or whether you are a freelance journalist, when there is a threat, you face the same measure of threat. You saw what happened in Homa Bay. However, as you have clearly noted, freelance journalists face a higher risk because sometimes they do not have access to some of the resources that some of the media houses can marshal. But of course, as a council, we, and together with other stakeholders, we are working to ensure that as we go towards the election, all journalists have access to the protection and the safety they require when they are on the ground. And of course, there are simple measures that all journalists need to. We accredit freelance journalists. We accredit some of the people who go out to the field to cover content creators. Some of the journalists working in media houses have now actually become content creators. We accredit them. In that front, all journalists are the same. But on the ground, we realize that, of course, there are unique challenges that freelance journalists face. And so what are we doing as a council? As I told you, one of the things we went to the ground to do is launch a media hub where these journalists can also have a space where they can churn out their stories. So together with other stakeholders, we will work together to ensure that all journalists are safe and secure. Yes.
Because an attack on one is an attack on all. As we wind up, Becky, what needs to change in the system for a Kenyan journalist to be, safe from attacks, from being killed, from intimidation? What needs to change in the system?
First of all, we need to stop profiling media. And we need to change the perception we have towards media. Media is not the enemy. Media can never be the enemy. Media always acts in public interest. And even when media does not act in public interest, there are measures or there are mechanisms that can fall into place to ensure that we call them out. There's the Complaints Commission. We are a country that is ruled by the rule of law. We cannot start stoning journalists and saying that they are against one party or the other. Let's stop the profiling. Secondly, we need to ensure that those who met out violence are called to account and are actually held accountable for their actions. And secondly, we need to remember that journalists serve all of us. So if we plan to beat journalists today, what will happen tomorrow when you actually need us to cover you? And we are either in hospital or injured. So, and also the public needs to be aware that journalists enjoy rights and privileges. We enjoy rights under the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, Article 19. We enjoy rights under the International Conventions on Civil and Political Rights, Article 19. The Africa Charter on Human and People's Rights, Article 9. Journalists have the freedom to operate without fear and intimidation. All we need to do as a country is remain true to the constitutional rights that guarantee the safety and protection of journalists. Section 33 of the Constitution, Section 34, Section 35, they all provide for the rights and protection of journalists. And even Article 26, we have a right to life as well. So we all need to adhere to what the law says when it comes to protection of the rights and privileges of journalists. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Becky, for making time for us.
Yes.
This has been a very insightful conversation. And again, journalists are not the enemy. We are just messengers, as you can see on your screen. So no need to, attack a journalist. Because what happens now if you attack and then the journalist is in the hospital? Then who covers whatever is happening or the events that you want captured? Rebecca Mutiso is the manager, press freedom and advocacy at the Media Council of Kenya, speaking to us about media freedom, which is currently under siege. Coming up next is a conversation on AI in class, the future of Kenya's education. Freddie will be back with that conversation alongside Dr. Tony Divine. Do stay right here. You're watching TV47 Breakfast. My name is Annie Odida. Thank you for making time.